Let's hoop it up. 5 games on tonight's NBA slate, and here to play a fun little game of pick and roll. We have DraftKings contributor Kenny Ducey and RotoWire's Nick Whalen. So pick the following player or roll to another at the position, starting with no Harden, no Durant. Which kind of has Kyrie Irving feeling like a logical play at guard. He's going to cost you $9,900. You pick in the Kyrie chalk or roll into a different guard, Kenny?
I'll take the chalk here. I'll bite the bullet. Look, he has 5.2 more DK fantasy points per 36 minutes. With James Harden and Kevin Durant on the floor, does Kyrie Irving. It's a 4.1% usage rate spike. And New Orleans, they play pretty poor defense, especially against point guards, allowing 25.6 points per game to opposing point guards over the last 2 weeks. We know Lonzo Ball is a liability at the position. There's a negative 0.59 real plus minus on the defensive end. And while I don't think that this game means anything to the Nets, and I don't even know if they'll win it, we have seen time and time again in this spot, Kyrie Irving will go off. He gets all of the ball. The Nets have 7 players out, so they need someone to shoot the ball. Kyrie should be taking all the shots here. And, by the way, this is they've now only played 7 games together, Kyrie Irving, Kevin Durant, and James Harden. Just figured I would say that because that's just a mind-blowing stat.
That actually is. I was unaware of that. Nick, you want the highest price guard on the slate, or are you going to roll with someone else?
I mean, first of all, 7 seems high. I would have guessed it was lower than that, honestly. Yeah. I mean, with the amount of injuries that they've had. So I don't remember them playing that many games together at all. I'm fine rolling with Kyrie tonight. I think it's possible that you maybe look at the last 2 games and get a little bit spooked. 20 points against Miami, struggled from the field in that one, 6 of 19, had just 12 points in that blowout against Charlotte on Friday. So, maybe some people look at that box score and get a little bit scared away. But like Kenny said, there's so many injuries for this Nets team that, Kyrie Irving's not always a guy that loves taking a ton of shots. But with no James Harden, with no Kevin Durant, I mean, even some of their better role players, Nick Claxton's not playing in this game. Marcus Aldridge is never playing in another game. By default, that usage is going to trickle down somewhere. And obviously Kyrie is kind of the head of the snake in that regard. If you do want to pivot to another high-priced guard, I like Darren Fox tonight. He's at 9,800 at home against Minnesota. Obviously, the Kings are a terrible team. They're going up against another terrible team in Minnesota. But, Fox is a guy that, regardless of all the losing of late, has put up some huge numbers.
Let's talk about Kawhi Leonard here, guys. Returning to the court on Sunday against the T-Wolves after missing 4 games with a foot issue and put up just under 44 DK fantasy points in 23 minutes. So he gets Portland tonight. Will cost you $9,200. So picking him or rolling to a forward who is perhaps a little more trustworthy, Nick?
Yeah, I don't know that there's that many more trustworthy options on the slate. Like, as long as Kawhi Leonard is for sure playing tonight, I'm pretty comfortable rolling with him. There's a pretty big jump down to Brandon Ingram at 8,400. And then you start getting into some of the, iffier options, your Miles Bridges, your Anthony Edwards, Buddy Hield, Harrison Barnes, Norm Powell, players like that. So, if you're looking at small forward specifically, Kawhi Leonard is certainly the number one elite option in that regard. Like you said, doesn't need a ton of minutes to rack up great fantasy value. The one thing with him is, even if he is fully healthy, there's not a lot of scenarios where you see him playing like 37, 38, 39 minutes. They're generally pretty conservative with him. So maybe he doesn't have that crazy ceiling. But, super high floor player whenever he's on the court.
Kenny, what say you?
I don't know if this is allowed, but I'm actually going to go up here. I think Nick is right to not play Kawhi Leonard. He's more of a good real life player than a good, fantasy player. I mean, his great games are few and far between. He's pretty consistent, but at his price tag, it's never really worth rostering him. I like Zion Williamson at $9,700. I'm going to go attack the Brooklyn Nets, who I just crapped on because they don't play any defense, especially now without Nick Claxton down low. He's actually been one of their more reliable front court players. We know LaMarcus Aldridge is no longer there. Nick Claxton is out for this game under the health and safety protocols. So I don't think that this front court is really going to be as strong as it needs to be to combat Zion Williamson. It already is allowing a point per play on post-ups this season, which ranks in the bottom 10 of the NBA. And Zion here, he's just been getting a lot of usage lately. You want to look back at the Knick game. He didn't get a lot of usage in that one, but it was also kind of a different game. They couldn't go down low because Nerlens Noel, obviously a very imposing presence. They're hard to go against. They didn't want to drive the ball in on him, rightfully so. But here, I think that the Nets are able to be exposed, and Zion Williamson's going to drive the ball in all day long, post up, just get whatever he wants here against this bad defense of the Brooklyn Nets. So I really like him at 9,700. I think you can rely on him for probably 5x here.
All right, Kenny, this one's for you. Julius Randle of the Knicks has been on fire, producing 50-plus DK fantasy point performances in each of his last 4 games. That includes a 74-point outing against the Mavs. So he's going to cost you $10,100 against Charlotte tonight. You paying up for Randle or rolling to another center, Kenny?
Well, there's 2 things I'll say here. And first of all, the Charlotte Hornets are really good against centers. If you look at their points per the points in the paint allowed per game for the whole season, they're in the top 5, and they just have a pretty good front court. They've been playing pretty good defense lately. It's really hard for me to pay that much money for Randle, even though I do love him with all my heart. And it's even harder for me to say that I like Enes Kanter at $6,100 because I hate him with all my heart. I had to watch him play basketball. I'm sure you did too, Emerson. Not very fun. But one of the things I can admit about Enes Kanter is that he's a very good rebounder. He might be the best rebounder in basketball, if not a top 5 rebounder in basketball. This guy is just really good, especially on the offensive glass. We know what he can do. We've seen him go for 30 rebounds the last time he played significant minutes. He played 37 minutes against Detroit. And I think that this is a great spot. With Nurkic out, this guy should be getting 30, 35 minutes. Yusuf Nurkic's not going to play in this game because of injury recovery or rest or whatever they're calling it nowadays in the NBA. So Enes Kanter should be in line for plenty of minutes, and I just don't see any way I cannot play Enes Kanter. As good as some of the other options might sound on paper, for the minutes you're going to get, I mean, this guy could legitimately get you 10 times your salary. He can get you 60 points here at $6,100. That's a building block for me at center, so I have to play him. I can't pay up for Randle.
Nick, what do you think here? Second highest priced center on the slate.
Yeah, it's really tough. I mean, Kenny laid out the case for why this isn't an ideal matchup. I don't think you look at the depth chart in Charlotte and say, oh, man, he's going up against Cody Zeller. He's going up against Bismack Biyombo. He's going up against Vernon Carey, who started 2 games recently for the Hornets. But the scheme is really good. Yeah, they keep teams out of the paint. They force players like Randle to beat them in the mid-range and beat them from 3, which he is capable of doing. But, yeah, it's not an ideal matchup. Both these teams are bottom 5 in pace. The one thing you do look to, though, over the last 10 games, Charlotte is bottom 10 in rebounding rate. So even if it's not, a 5th straight 30-plus point game for Julius Randle, maybe it's a game where he makes some hay on the boards. The big thing with Randle is like the floor right now is just so high because of the minutes. And you're kind of just waiting, for that to come down at some point. Like even at RotoWire, when we're looking at minute projections day to day, it's like, are we really going to project this guy for 41 minutes tonight? But then you look and his last 8 games, it's 39, 37, 38, 38, 39, 42, 41, and then 47 against New Orleans the other night. But we know who's the head coach of this team. I don't think that's going to slow down anytime soon. So if you like Julius Randle, even in a not ideal matchup, he might be playing 6 or 7 more minutes than the guy who's next to him in the pricing on DraftKings.
Well, Nick, sticking with center here and some value, Hornets, we were just talking about Charlotte. Big man, PJ Washington's fresh off a 45 DK fantasy point performance against the Blazers. So it was his return from a 3-game absence due to an ankle injury. Is he a solid value play tonight at just 5.4? Would you roll to someone else for bigger value?
I mean, at that price, it's certainly justifiable. I'm surprised he wasn't bumped up a little bit more, after that big game. Kind of a weird situation where he didn't start that game. They started Vernon Carey. He played less than 10 minutes. Washington essentially, plays a larger than usual workload off the bench of 34 minutes. He's been super hit or miss. On his good nights, he looks like, a complete stud and kind of a steal in his second NBA season. And then he'll go through stretches where 5 or 6 games in a row, he's scoring, 5 points, 8 points, 3 points, 0 points, and looking kind of lost. So if you catch him on the right night, he's a great value. If you catch him on the wrong night, he can kind of bust your entire lineup. Yeah, I think the Enes Kanter call at center by Kenny is a really good one. If you want to pay up a little bit more, I think Clint Capella going up against a very overmatched Orlando Magic front court tonight is another way that I lean. I tend to be a little bit more conservative, so I'm probably staying away from PJ Washington tonight.
What are you going to do? You're going to stay away from PJ as well, Kenny?
I think so. I mean, in terms of value, if I'm looking to get a value guy in my lineup, I think it's going to be Anthony Simons here, $3,800. He's had 30 minutes over the past 2 games, and you can't deny that this guy is going to see the floor a lot here, despite the fact the matchup isn't great. He should get some Reggie Jackson defense. We don't like the Clippers, but we do like Reggie Jackson on the defensive end because he doesn't really like to play at all. And the thing about Simons is he's going to get shots up. I mean, this is a guy that when he sees minutes, and Damian Lillard is going to miss this game, we've seen Blazers Twitter explode like this guy is going to, tell CJ McCollum to go pack his bags because he's taking over the shooting guard job. At times, he looks that good, and he just hasn't really gotten the minutes lately. But if you think back months ago when the Blazers didn't have McCollum and they were just decimated by injury, this guy was one of the guys that really stepped up and played good basketball. He's a good shot maker. He has a good stroke from three. He took 4 threes last game, 8 threes the game before that when we're looking at the minutes that he's seen. But again, he's not afraid to take any shots. He's not going to shy away from a three. He's not going to shy away from an open jumper. So I like that type of guy at $3,800 who's going to see probably 30 to maybe even more than 30 minutes here with the shorthanded Blazers team. I think that he's a really, really nice value tonight, and I'm definitely looking to get him in my lineup.
Kenny, slate approved pick time. Favorite DFS play on tonight's slate?
Yeah, I think it might be Cole Anthony at $6,000. This kid has just started to play some really good basketball. The Hawks are 21st in defensive rating over the past 7 games. I think the matchup is right. And when you're talking about Orlando, who do they have? Emerson, they have no one. They're just throwing everything at the wall. They're letting their RJ Hampton play. They're letting Cole Anthony play. So I think he should get plenty of usage, plenty of minutes here, and I like him to keep it going.
What say you, Nick? What do you got?
Well, that was my value play as well. He finally played over 30 minutes in his last game, Cole Anthony. That is, has the best positional matchup on the slate tonight. Obviously going up against Trae Young, probably the worst positional defender in the entire league at any position. So Anthony's a great call. I'm going to go back to Darren Fox, though. If you're talking elite money, he's at 9,800, goes up against the Timberwolves team that's 5th in pace over the last 10 games. That is 30th. That's dead last in defensive rating, allowing 120 points per 100 possessions over its last 10 games. I think this is an ideal matchup. Minnesota's guard situation, still kind of a mess. D'Angelo Russell's playing like 20 minutes a night. Ricky Rubio's rolls all over the place. I don't think they have anybody that can step in and stop Darren Fox.